Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. My name's Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week we're covering a game. I don't think it quite falls under forgotten games because I don't think anybody has forgotten about this game. But it is not a good game, and the game is, of course, Duke Nukem Forever.
Old Duke Nukem. We're getting into it this week. I'm pretty excited because we got to play this together, but separately.
We've been just. It's not co-op. I think it has multiplayer, but we haven't messed with any of the multiplayer stuff. But the campaign, I believe, is just single player. So we've just been sitting on Discord playing together. Mike on his PC, me on my Xbox 360.
You were the one that was really tortured in this experiment because you were playing on 360, and we'll get to that later. In fact, you should write a note about that in the gameplay about the load times because that's oof. Okay.
Yeah, it is. It's rough on 360.
So let's do the grime facts first, like we always do. So it was developed. I put Gearbox Software because that's who finished it, but it was started by 3D Realms, and we're going to get into that whole fiasco in a moment. It was published by 2K Games. The initial worldwide release took place on June 10th, 2011. And then in Japan, it launched a little later on March 2012. And then OS X launched March 18th, 2012. I just realized, though, that might be incorrect. Did I do the incorrect? Hold on. Did I do the incorrect release date for OS X? For some reason, I think it's 2011. Let me look. It
might have taken a while. Sometimes it takes a long time.
It is August 18th, 2011. I wrote that incorrectly. It's August 18th, 2011.
That's a pretty fast follow.
Yeah,
pretty
for
good.
OS X, for sure.
Did Aspire do that port? They probably did. They do everything. If it's on OS X, it's usually Aspire doing the port.
I'm glad I caught that. I caught my own error. Okay, so OS X came out August 18th, 2011. Japan was the one that really got it super late, which was March 2012. The systems that came out on initially were Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. And then, as I said before, OS X came later. The best way to play this game is Steam, and we're going to get into it but the main reason why is loading times. That is the bane of your existence if you're trying to play this game on 360. It is hard to do. And I imagine PS3 also had the same problem.
The frame rate is rough, and I am playing it off of the hard drive on my 360, and even I can't imagine if you were trying to play it straight from the disc, it would be so much worse. But like we're talking like 2 or 3 minute load times where you die and you just sit there and wait. And that's how Mike got so much further ahead of me, is because I died a couple times, and every time I had to wait so long.
Yeah, and we were playing the game on easy. At least I was, because I'm just trying to experience it, but I don't need that difficulty. So, number of copies sold. This is from NPD. Duke Nukem Forever sold 376,300 units in its first month, which is okay, but definitely not profitable. But by August 8th, 2011, Take-Two did say Duke Nukem Forever did make a profit by then. So,
well, hey,
good for them.
I'm surprised they didn't make another one.
Yeah, I know, right? Jeez. We'll get into that too. So the gameplay or genre style is first-person shooter, but it has some elements of, you could say, third-person racing games in it, and we'll talk about that when we get to the gameplay.
It has a few like vehicle sections and stuff.
Yeah. The average time to complete, and this is from howlongtobeat.com, on the main story is 9 hours, main plus extra 12.5, and then the completionist is going to be 20.5 hours. Boy, do I not feel any desire to be a completionist with this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Metacritic score for PC was 54 out of 100, PS3 was 51 out of 100, and Xbox 360 was the lowest with 49 out of 100. And so there's a lot of sources I looked at for this. For the timeline, we're definitely going to go off the official timeline that was released with the retail edition of the game. Like, this came in the instruction booklet with it. But there are some really good articles if you kind of want to read more for yourself that we kind of referenced to in this episode. And the first one is a Wired article called Learn to Let Go, How Success Killed Duke Nukem. That was actually written in 2009 when everyone thought the game was dead, so just keep that in mind when you read the context of it. There's also an article by Comic Book Resources called Duke Nukem Forever, What Happened to the Most Anticipated Sequel Ever, which is pretty good. There's an old CNN Money article called Duke Nukem versus Take-Two that is important in the context of Take-Two versus George Broussard of 3D Realms. So we kind of will get into that a little bit later. But for now, let's get into the official timeline of this game as was released with the retail edition, because this was 14 and a half years in the making, this game.
Wow,
so,
that was a long development time.
Yeah, so May 1996, and I'm just going to read straight from the instruction booklet here. I hope everyone's okay with that. It's going to be kind of long, but we'll kind of go through them pretty quick here. Version 1.3D of Duke Nukem 3D is shipped to game retailers worldwide. Duke Nukem 3D is a massive success that for many defined an entire generation of gaming. Conceptualization and discussion of a sequel immediately begins inside 3D Realms headquarters near Dallas, Texas. So that's important to know. Duke Nukem Forever was thought of the minute this came out and was successful.
Yeah, Duke Nukem 3D was extremely, like, it was really fun. People loved it. Like, this was a big game, yeah.
Yep. And then in June 1996, Duke Nukem Forever, with the number 4, which was a 2D side-scrolling platformer game produced by Keith Schuler, was suspended because they decided that Duke Nukem 3D is the way to go and 3D is the way to go, and they're going to do a sequel in 3D. So the original 2 Duke Nukem games were platforming side-scrollers. Duke Nukem 3D revolutionized it, and they were going to go with that from now on. December 1996, the Quake 1 engine is licensed by 3D Realms for Duke Nukem Forever, permanently replacing the build engine, which is what Duke Nukem 3D was built on. Most of the Duke Nukem 3D team, led by the original Duke Nukem developers Todd Replogle and Alan H. Bloom III, begins research and development with the technology for the game. April 1997, Duke Nukem Forever is officially announced by 3D Realms with the intention to release in 1998. That's right. The first release date of this game was 1998.
Wow.
Likewise, 3D Realms also officially announces that Duke Nukem Forever will be created with the Quake 2 engine.
Cutting edge at the time.
Committing to the Quake 2 engine. Here we go. May 1997, Randy Pitchford and Brian Martell, founders of Gearbox Software, leave 3D Realms to help form Rebel Boat Rocker and then later Gearbox Software. Again, keep in mind, we're reading this from Gearbox's notes, so it's going to be very Gearbox rah-rah focused.
Mm-hmm.
November 1997, Duke Nukem Forever appears on the cover of PC Gamer magazine. Inside are the first screenshots ever released for the game. So they had screenshots in November of 1997 for the game. May 1998, the first ever reveal trailer for Duke Nukem Forever is released to the public during the Electronic Entertainment Expo E3. This was a big hype moment. I'm just talking now. This is just the hype moment for the game being real. June 1998, 3D Realms announces big change to change the Unreal Engine for Duke Nukem Forever. This is the first, you could argue, second engine change, because remember they said the Quake 1 engine, then they went to the Quake 2 engine. Now they're going to the Unreal Engine.
Oof.
Note the pattern begins here, the bad pattern.
Engine changes are not a good sign for the development of a game.
Yeah, there's also a little thing in one of the, because I also looked, I'm not going to lie, I looked at the wiki fandom thing for this too, just because there's a lot of data in there for that. And there was a quote that I couldn't really find a source for about how George Broussard said at this time that it was going to take like a month to 6 weeks to do the engine changes and then they'll be right back on track. That didn't happen. That didn't happen.
Yeah. Yikes.
March 1999, 3D Realms announces that Megadeth is to cover and record the theme song for Duke Nukem Forever. We got Megadeth on board. All right.
Yeah.
November 1999. Note, this is also a year after the original release date of Holidays, 1998. PC Gamer's infamous Miss Me cover story featuring Duke Nukem Forever hits newsstands. Inside are a large number of new screenshots for Duke Nukem Forever that expose how the game looks with the new engine. December 1999, GT Interactive, then publisher of Duke Nukem games, is purchased by Infogrames. Publishing rights for Duke Nukem Forever are then transferred away from GT Interactive. May 2000, Gathering of Developers, a publisher comprised entirely of developer members, including 3D Realms, is purchased by Take-Two Interactive. This is when Take-Two takes over 3D Realms. It's May 2000. So, in theory, if they'd have got the game out in time, 3D Realms could have been the ones that did this themselves. You know what I mean? But it just didn't happen. And that's going to be a cause for concern later. December 2000, Gathering of Developers announces that the company has acquired publishing rights for the highly anticipated Duke Nukem Forever. Take-Two Interactive also acquires the publishing rights for the complete catalog of already released Duke Nukem products, including rights to certain future products. So that's something we're going to talk about at the end of the episode today, but Take-Two still owns Duke Nukem. And also Gearbox, I believe. Because I think Gearbox is owned by Take-Two,
I think that sounds right to me.
So that's like where we're kind of at when we end this episode today. May 2001, this is the infamous at E3 2001, the highly regarded Duke Nukem Forever 10th anniversary trailer is released. It is arguably considered to be one of the best video game trailers of all time. It is also a complete hype train. This is me talking now. A complete hype train that doesn't come out ever. So it's a lie. September 2004, 3D Realms announces that a new in-game physics system, Megon Game Dynamics, has been chosen for Duke Nukem Forever. So they're adding more systems again.
Over 3 years in between those two updates, May 2001 to September 2004. We heard nothing about this game from then on.
That's a good point. It is a 3-year dead zone between 2001 and 2004. And then it is
another 2 years to the next one.
Because the next news is August 2006. Shack News reports and confirms a rumor that a large contingent of employees had left 3D Realms. Most of them had relocated to Gearbox Software, which is also based in the Dallas area. That's a pretty big one. So their team leaves. July 2007, the famous Ventrilo harassment video using the voice of Duke Nukem to torment online game players was uploaded to YouTube and has been viewed more than 6 million times. I have no idea what that is. I'm guessing it's just a fun internet thing, with Duke Nukem's voice, because Duke Nukem's voice is pretty funny.
Yeah, and using it to make, to harass people online. I could see that in 2007 I don't want to say that's early internet, but it is early, meme culture. Our standards for humor were a lot lower in 2007.
Yeah.
Online.
December 2011, December 2007, not 2011, Shack News breaks the first video teaser for Duke Nukem Forever in over 6 years, included were small snippets of in-game footage. That's right, 6 years between game footage from that 2001 trailer that was one of the best trailers of all time to 2007. September 2008, users discovered Duke Nukem Forever unlockable screenshots in the re-release of Duke Nukem 3D.
Ooh.
December 2008, the last official Duke Nukem Forever screenshot from 3D Realms is released to the community because May 2009, the story that 3D Realms has laid off the Duke Nukem Forever development team breaks and tops gaming news websites around the world. Also,
and
in
everybody
May
was
2009,
like, "This game's done. This game is never coming out now."
Yeah, this is where everyone thinks the game is dead, and this is honestly where that article from Wired comes from. Is this time period?
Mm-hmm.
Also, in May 2009, Take-Two Interactive and 3D Realms submit legal arguments regarding disagreements about the business arrangement for developing and publishing of the game of Duke Nukem Forever, because they're in arguments now, legal arguments. June 2009. We're almost done, folks. I know this is really long, but I felt like this was important to get the whole context, and it's already written out, so it's a lot easier. This is the official word from Gearbox. So, June 2009, Gearbox and 3D Realms begin negotiation of an asset purchase agreement for the Duke Nukem franchise and Duke Nukem Forever. The business agreement is finalized and executed approximately 6 months later, and ownership of the game and brand is transferred to Gearbox Software. So Gearbox now owns it as of June 2009.
Okay.
Also in June 2009, Triptych Games is formed from several ex-3D Realms employees and a couple new individuals. July 2009, Triptych Games signs paperwork with 3D Realms to complete the Duke Nukem Forever single-player campaign. August 2009, Duke Nukem Forever's narrative script is written at Triptych and approved by 3D Realms. Triptych gets to surprise John St. John, the famous English language voice actor who originally played Duke Nukem, with a phone call. Hell has finally frozen over, is what they tell him. November 2009, single-player work on Duke Nukem Forever content is complete. December 2009, Gearbox and 2K Games begin renegotiation of the publishing agreement for Duke Nukem Forever. The business agreement is finalized and executed approximately 6 months later, with 2K Games and Take-Two Interactive securing long-term publishing rights to Duke Nukem. January 2010, Triptych Games locks down their single-player version of the game and begins negotiations with Gearbox Software. February 2010, Triptych relocates to Gearbox's offices in Plano, Texas, Bank of America Tower, and resumes work alongside Gearbox and Piranha to help port Duke Nukem Forever to consoles, add multiplayer, and polish features within the game. So that at least is kind of cool. I feel like Gearbox didn't just take all the 3D Realms stuff and use it, but what ended up happening is some of the people from 3D Realms created Triptych, had an agreement with 3D Realms that they're the ones that were working on this. We're going to kind of migrate it to Gearbox, like, naturally. So you're still getting the devs from 3D Realms that were making Duke Nukem Forever and then moving it slowly to Gearbox, which has problems, as we're going to know when the game comes out, but at least they did that. May 2010, Take-Two and 3D Realms resolve and settle all differences regarding legal complaints from the previous year. Oh, they made up. That's nice.
Yeah.
September 2010, Gearbox Software and 2K Games surprised the public by showing off the first playable build of Duke Nukem Forever at PAX 2010.
I was there. I played it.
You did?
Yep, at PAX 2010. I played it there.
Oh, that's awesome. You were a part of the history of this podcast.
Yes, I suppose I was.
13 years ago. Well, 12 years ago, probably. A little under 13.
Yeah.
September 2010, Gearbox Software publicly announces that it has acquired the Duke Nukem brand. So officially, Gearbox now owns Duke Nukem as of 2010 in September. October 2010, 2K Games and Gearbox Software announced the Duke Nukem Forever First Access Club to be included in every copy of the Borderlands Game of the Year edition, allowing participating customers first access to the Duke Nukem Forever consumer demo.
Wow.
Yeah, with Borderlands. It's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
December 2010, Duke Nukem Forever reappears on the holiday issue of PC Gamer with the same headline as its cover 11 years prior, Miss Me. Which is funny. January 2011, Gearbox Software announces the release date of May 3rd for Duke Nukem Forever, along with the first reveal trailer with 2K Games for Duke Nukem Forever since 2007.
Wow.
So that is a 4-year gap between trailers. February 2011, Duke Nukem, with the help of the Borderlands Claptrap, opens the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences' 2011 Interactive Achievement Awards in Las Vegas. The show, hosted by comedian Jay Moore, is streamed live over the internet and broadcast on television via G4 TV. That's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
June 2011, Gearbox Software and 2K Games released the first consumer demo for Duke Nukem Forever. And then June 2011, Gearbox Software, alongside Triptych Games, Piranha Games, and 3D Realms, released the approved Gold Masters for Duke Nukem Forever after 15 years since work first began on Duke Nukem 3D sequel. 2K Games launches and ships Duke Nukem Forever video games worldwide to eager and patient audiences. I would say eager is the right word, but I don't think patient is the right word.
Yeah, I mean, forced patient because, I mean, what are they going to do if they had to wait, right? Like, what else? They had no other option, so I guess they were patient, but not really. Yeah,
so that's the timeline. Now, there's a lot of things that were left out because this is the raw retail timeline, of, we're doing it. We made the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to talk about a couple of different things that kind of happened in there. We briefly mentioned on the war between Take-Two and George Broussard. So there's a CNN Money article from 2003 in it where they announced the game would not be released in 2003. And essentially Take-Two was going to write off their losses. And George Broussard did not really respond in a great way, to no one's surprise. And he said, quote, Take-Two needs to SCFU IMO, end quote. And that was just what he said the minute this came out. Many sources blame George Broussard and Scott Miller for working with a 1995 mentality in developing the game. They were extremely understaffed during the majority of development. They had 18 people on staff for this game in 2003. That is not a lot.
That's not enough people in 2003. Maybe in 1995 that would have worked. Like
yeah,
you were saying earlier, 1995 mentality, but not in 2003. Games were bigger.
Way bigger. And I think it's safe to say, reading like all these articles, Broussard, from my like reading everything I found and looking through, it was pretty clear that George Broussard just had to make a choice. And they were in this time in the late 90s, early 2000s, where the technology was just changing so much. It's like he couldn't make a choice, you know, because he wanted it to be the next big game. But then the game engine kept changing. So the next big game kept like he was chasing it essentially. Yeah. And they were always behind. Yeah. So it's like, I don't even know if there's someone, if you wanted to point blame at someone, I don't know if you could point blame. I think it was their idea of trying to make the world's best video game at this particular moment in time that created this cycle of we're changing.
I still place blame on them because they should have picked one and stuck with it, even if like, it's not like, oh no, we didn't have any games come out during this time because of that, right? Like games came out, good games came out during this time. So their desire to be on the cutting edge at all times and constantly changing the game engine that they're using in order to like facilitate that was a bad call. They should have stuck with Quake 2 and you can put out a game in 2001 on the Quake 2 engine. Yeah.
See, I wanted to be not so aggro towards them yet, but we're gonna be, and get ready for it. I agree with you. You are right that they could have just stuck to it, but I wonder like what mental part of them at this time was like the pressure. Was it pressure? Maybe it was pressure.
Yeah.
Here's a quote from the Wired article. Let me just read this real quick. Quote, part of what caught Broussard off guard was the sheer speed at which video games were improving. In the late 90s, the processing speed of computer chips exploded. So each year, programmers were releasing more and more powerful game engines, able to handle increasingly lifelike graphics, more enemies on screen at a time, smarter artificial intelligence, and more objects that could be destroyed. And the whole premise of Duke Nukem, and we're going to talk about this like later on when we talk about gameplay, is you want to interact with like everything. And so I wonder if to Broussard, like, we got to make it so you can interact with everything and we got to be on top of everything. So we have to pick the newest thing. But I agree with you, Tyler. Like, looking in the past, they should have just picked one and just gone with it. Just go. You know, you need to. If anything, the lesson here is finish a game.
And like make a call and stick to it, right? Like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever change like the base of what you're building your game on, but you have to be thoughtful about it, and you can't just come across like whenever a new thing comes out. Oh, we're doing the Quake 2 engine now. Oh, the Unreal Engine is out now. We're doing Unreal Engine. Like, you can't be switching that often. And I know, and like, I have some empathy for how hard it was to make those decisions in the 90s because, like you said, technology was changing so much. Like, the Quake engine came out in like 1996, and then the Quake 2 engine was like 97. Quake 3 engine was like 99, or 2000, I guess. So like things were moving quickly, but like the original Half-Life is on, it's on their own custom, like called the Gold Source engine, but it's heavily based on the Quake 1 engine. It's not even based on Quake 2. And that's a game that came out in 1998 versus, the engine was 96 when Quake came out. Because like you can't afford to just switch, and if you need features from a newer engine, maybe look at like creating those features yourself in what you're already building. I don't know. I don't make video games, so I don't know what I'm talking about. And it's pretty easy to like Monday morning quarterback like 20 years later.
Oh yeah. Especially this kind of story where you're like, we can look back easily and say, well, this was the problem. This was the problem. But in the moment,
right.
What could they have done?
In the moment, they could have finished the game. They should have stuck with the thing. That's what they should have done because they didn't have the skills to move that quickly between things. I'm sure there are some games that made a big engine pivot at one point and they go, whew, thank goodness we did that because we were able to do all these great things and that's why the game was so good. Like, I'm not saying you can't do it, but it is, like I said, we're Monday morning quarterbacking a little bit here. So
which I think you have to, when you talk about Duke Nukem Forever, you have to. And to get into Broussard's mindset, that was what was going on, I feel like, based on reading everything. And we're going to get a little bit more gossipy in a second that'll kind of fill that part in. But before we go into the gossipy part where we talk about like the war, there's currently a feud between Scott Miller and George Broussard, the people that founded Apogee that became 3D Realms together. And it's recent. It's May 10, 2022 is when it happened because that was leaked. The Duke Nukem 2001 was leaked. So that kind of respawned it. But not to make a pun or anything because it's another studio, but still, One of the craziest parts to me of this whole story, and it also tells me about how much they both cared, Scott Miller and George Broussard, which is why I don't want to like rag on them.
I mean, yeah, they definitely cared.
They personally funded this. Did you know that? They spent $20 million of their own money funding this.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry it didn't work out.
Yeah, that was the speculated cost. But now that we're done with that, we can like attack a little bit and get into the goss. So there was a blog post by Scott Miller that came out in May 10th, 2022. This is right after the release of the Duke Nukem 2001, Duke Nukem Forever 2001 build that's very incomplete. And I'm going to put the blog post like right into the Discord right after we record this as kind of like a teaser to what we're doing tomorrow. So if you want to look into the history resources or sources channel, it'll be in there. But in it, Miller said there were three main problems with development. And we've kind of gone over a couple of these, but here they are. This is directly from his blog post, just copy paste it in. He said, quote, "We were always understaffed by at least 50%. We did not have a good development roadmap. At least I never once saw one. And instead the project was ad-libbed too much. Because of the game's slow development, when new 3D technology became available, the project in effect rebooted to make use of the newest tech, causing massive delays over and over."
Those second, like both of those, I mean, the first one, the understaffed by 50% is terrible too. But not having a roadmap is, that's probably the biggest mistake they made, because like you said, with that 1995 development mentality, back in 1995, you could kind of do that because a game didn't take that long to make. So you could kind of just wing it until you decided it was done, right? But at this point in time, games were becoming so much more complex and required more people. So yeah, they needed to have twice as many people, it sounds like. But you also, when you have that many people, you need to make sure you're all working towards the same goal. And you need a roadmap to do that. Like when you have just 5 or 10 people working on a game, you guys can all kind of just like look around and like, yeah, we all know what we're doing, right? We kind of know, and like you can sort of stay synced. But when you have 100 people working on a game, you don't have that. It's a lot harder to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So you need a development roadmap, and that's not going to work out. And then that compounds that last point of always changing to new technology. It's like if you had a roadmap, you could deprioritize those new technology things, right? You could say, hey, yeah, it's really cool that this new thing just came out, but we don't need it because we're not trying to do what it does for us. We have a roadmap here. This is what we're trying to do, right? And when you don't have that, then it becomes easy to go like see the shiny new thing and want to go play with it. And then that, causes delays, and it just sort of all compounds upon each other.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think it's pretty clear to me, just based on the stories, that if there's one person we were going to blame during this, it would be George Broussard. And it doesn't help his case. This is the tweet that Broussard responded with. So here's his tweet. Here we go. Quote, "Scott's a clueless narcissist whose actions are what led to the gearbox suits / friction that led to us losing 3DR and the Duke IP. Mind-blowing the nonsense he spews. Not surprising due to his depth of manipulation and narcissism. Least I've had the class to keep thoughts private."
Well, dispute him then, dude.
Yeah, so I really think, because Scott Miller, was the like higher level up businessy guy, if you don't know the relationship between the two of them, and George Broussard was the creative guy. And this really made me think about id Software when we talked about id a lot in Masters of Doom, in how you had John Romero as the creative guy, and then you had John Carmack as the engineer. But in this case, there is no like John Carmack-y engineering figure. Instead, it's like a business man.
Yeah.
So I would say too, there's this whole like business versus creativity thing happening here, especially with Broussard like kind of changing the argument to them losing 3DR and the Duke IP as something they didn't want. But in reality, it's like if you didn't lose it, the game never would have come out. It just never would have happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't know. I think there's a series of unfortunate events that happened here a lot, but I do think if there's people that we had to blame and look at, it would be I'm sure we just don't know enough about Scott Miller, but I feel bad piling onto the Broussard mess this up train, but I'm going to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll never truly know, I suppose. And like, it is like making video games is hard, especially in a time period where technology is always changing. Like, I understand the desire to want to stay cutting edge and be like the next big thing. I totally get it.
Yeah.
That was a detriment to them. I'm not saying you can't make that a goal of yours, but they were not able to be successful with that, and it caused massive problems in making this game.
For sure. And I feel sad actually for both of them, because you read about like their early history and how good they were as friends. Like, they met in high school and were making games in high school, these two. And then they get super successful and it like all falls apart at this moment. And actually, like, that's why I don't want to like rag on them too much, because obviously they were the heads of the studio. Obviously they were at fault. That's pretty clear to tell. And there's also, in that Wired article, a lot of anonymous interviews from people that were there and developed it, and they were really blaming the leadership. Like, it's pretty clear at this point, if we have this many people saying it.
It's almost always a leadership problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it is. It actually is always a leadership problem, because even if it's like, oh, you can blame individual people on the team, like, the leaders like should not have put that person on the team. Like, it's always a leadership problem.
I feel super bad. I feel sad that they're not friends, like, because this is our dopey nice guy podcast. But I'm like, they used to be really good friends, and they're not friends anymore. And that's the saddest part, I think, of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Because in reality, yeah, everyone got a bad game, but these two people that met for their love of making games in high school and formed a company that was really successful and had a huge game in the 90s and like a big cultural defining game like Duke Nukem 3D, then it all falls apart because they can't follow up. It feels really bad. Not to just end the whole development story part on a downer, but that's where we're going to end it, because we got to talk about why this game is bad, and we got to go to gameplay.
You know, when we first started playing, I was like, so you have to put your brain into 2011 mindset, right? It's not useful to compare it to things that are coming out today. I was actually kind of impressed with how it felt at first. Also making concessions for this is on Xbox 360, so it's running at like 20 or 30 frames per second. That was pretty standard at the time. And the loading screens are long. That would be forgivable if the game was a lot better, but it's not. It's not like a cardinal sin to have a long loading time. It's just extra annoying when you're already not having fun. But in the beginning, I thought the game was actually pretty fun, and I was kind of struggling to see what other people had been like, oh, this game is terrible. I was like, it's not the greatest game I've ever played, but like, it wasn't unfun either. You know?
I was actually concerned. I kind of wish we should do this eventually. We should stream ourselves when we play these games like this, right? Because we both went into it like, this isn't that bad. And then we slowly turned together, I feel like, into being like, oh, that's inconvenient. Oh, that's bad. That's upsetting. This is annoying. This is not fun. To the point where in the end, we were going so crazy over the jumping noise. Just the fact that the jumping noise happens so much.
It makes the same noise every time he jumps, and it's really annoying.
But so if you've never played a Duke Nukem game, and full disclosure, I played a little bit of the platformers just to like try that out, but that's very different, obviously. And I never played Duke Nukem 3D. And this is the spiritual successor, supposedly, to Duke Nukem 3D, right? They're trying to capture that magic, that lightning in a bottle they got. The whole point of it is you can like interact with everything, right? You interact with everything around you. Okay. Like Duke goes to the bathroom. You can like go and play. If you see a pinball machine, you can go play it, things like that. And in that sense, they did that, and they did that really well, but it's almost to the point where they focused on that part so much, they ignored everything else, especially what makes a good first-person shooter game, which is the first-person shooting, which I felt like I don't want to say spongy, but it does kind of feel like you're just firing into things until they die. There's no like, they say this strategy about different weapons work more effectively on other enemies, and I was like trying it out, and I'm like, I don't know, everything just seems to die after like 3 or 4 shots with something.
I mean, we are also playing it on the super easy mode, so it might be a little different on the harder difficulties.
Yeah, and the big issue for me was the whole, because this is supposed to be, you're Duke Nukem, right? You are one of the original bad boys of action video games. Okay, in order to not swear on this podcast. And you can only carry 2 weapons at a time? What?
Yeah, this guy needs to be carrying all the weapons all the time.
He needs to be a Swiss Army knife of weapons. Just have him all over his body on his back. Like, just make it ridiculous. That's the first big gripe I had. I'm like, why can I only carry 2 weapons? I'm constantly running out of ammunition the whole game.
And the story of the game the story is pretty goofy because it kind of picks up 20 years later after Duke has saved the world from aliens in Duke Nukem 3D, I guess. And he's like rich and famous and everybody loves him and he's basically a superhero. And it's like constantly shown like how awesome this guy is, how great he is. And it's kind of done in a goofy way. Like they're not actually trying to sell you that he's great. Like it's super
campy. It's very
super
campy.
Yeah. You're supposed to be in on the joke, like that this guy's so great. And so the fact that he can only carry 2 weapons is kind of like, oh, that would have been an easy win for them to be like, because like usually when games are only carry 2 weapons, it's like, oh, realism, right? Like, but this game should say, yeah, we are being realistic. Duke Nukem can carry every single weapon in the game. That is realistic for him because he's so awesome, right?
He can drink a beer and then go punch aliens in the face to death. He can carry all these weapons on him. Yeah, it was really frustrating to try to play and only have 2 weapons. I was running out of ammo a lot and I was playing on easy.
Yeah.
Like I can only imagine if the bosses are harder to kill, how much you run out of ammo and have to use your fists. What's also strange is you can only carry 2 weapons, but there is a setting to change it so you can carry 4. And it's like, why not just make that the setting? I don't understand the reasoning behind it.
Yeah. Also, 4 still feels like not enough.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be an arcadey shooter, an arcadey silly action shooter, carry all the guns. Just make it like Doom. Just carry everything.
Yeah.
Who cares? There's also a wide variety and variety, I mean, there's not a lot of variety in it. There's just a lot of turret interactions where you're fighting people on a turret with unlimited ammo that has a heat mechanic. It happens a lot, like a noticeable amount in the game, especially after you leave the first beginning levels where you're like, why am I doing another turret sequence? This is super boring. And they like kind of depended on those to like kill time. It feels like you're killing time versus you're doing this for a reason or it feels fun. And that happened. That kind of was something I noticed as I was playing where I'm like, this takes a lot of time. And like, there's a moment where you're on the stratosphere. And I don't know if you got to this part, Tyler. It was like right after you fight the Hive Queen lady.
Oh, I think I got there, but that's about where I turned it off last night.
You get in a ship that's crashed with a turret, and you're in that ship shooting like spaceships that are coming far away, and they show you, oh, you can zoom to shoot them closer, and you zoom, and you do it for like 3 to 4 minutes, and it just feels like it's really long. It's the same 2 ships coming at you just from different directions, and I'm like, why are we doing this? Why is this in here? Just let me move on. It didn't really feel action hero-y. It felt more like I'm just killing time because you want to fill the game up with time. The one thing that you and I think both really liked, though, was the shrinking down remote control car time.
That part was really cool. It goes on a little bit too long. You're like kind of driving through Duke's hotel, which is very much, I don't think it's actually in Las Vegas because there's a Hollywood sign. Maybe it is in Las Vegas.
It is in Las Vegas, but it's stealing like Hollywood things because that's where the alien event took place in the first game, I believe.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're like going through basically a Las Vegas hotel on a remote control car because you shrunk down because of reasons. I don't know. It doesn't matter. That part was actually pretty fun. It went on a little too long. Like there's a part where you hit a loading screen and then you're like part 2 of the car racing part.
Yeah,
you're like, oh,
the levels
part 1
are
was enough.
split up because they didn't fit it right. So you play the Hive part 1 and 2, and then you play the boss, and it's really strange. It's just like they had to load it in, which doesn't make a lot of sense, I guess. But if for 360, maybe they did. I don't know what they were doing. I'm not a game developer, so it's hard to be super critical in this sense, but it didn't feel right to me.
I mean, the only thing to do is to like compare it to other games from about that time. Like I guess you could compare it to like Halo Reach. Halo Reach doesn't feel that way. So they could have done it differently.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It felt odd to me. I did like the shrinking down because it was just so absurd, and then it got old.
Yeah.
But there's also puzzles. There's a lot of gravity puzzles in it. Like they were trying to do some Half-Life baloney there.
Yeah.
And it didn't really fit.
Yeah, some of it's fun, some of it's not, but I feel like a Duke Nukem game Based on the persona they're giving Duke, he doesn't seem like a puzzle solver. He seems like the kind of guy that would come across a puzzle and just blast it until he gets what he needs from it, right?
Yeah.
Like that would have been the joke to make. It's like, oh, a puzzle, and he's like, then just shoots the puzzle until he doesn't have to do it.
Perfect. You just wrote a Duke Nukem moment. You just wrote a perfect Duke Nukem moment, I feel like.
But they left the puzzles in, and we had to do them.
The only puzzle that really worked, that it wasn't even a puzzle, was just finding a battery for a crane to knock a wall down with a wrecking ball. That made more sense. That was more of a Duke Nukem. That was the most Duke Nukem puzzling there should be, I think.
Yeah.
There's a shipping container you have to balance by throwing barrels in to jump up. And it's like, why even do this? Why not just make it more alien fighting? Because that's kind of what I felt Duke Nukem was going to be. In my mind, Duke Nukem is more Doom than it is Half-Life.
Yeah.
If they had that, obviously they would just not know that because this is made in 2016, was that Doom style, like keep fighting always to get your health back. That fits more with Duke Nukem than this puzzling thing does.
Yeah, and stuff like that shipping container thing where you had to like do a physics thing there, that definitely feels to me like they got a hold of some physics tech and they were like, great, we have this new Havoc physics or whatever, their physics engine, and it's like, what can we do with that? And someone goes, well, we can make a physics puzzle. Rather than like getting the technology to fit what they wanted to make, it feels like they got the technology and then tried to make something to fit the technology, and what ends up feeling like it's just this hollow puzzle that's not really a puzzle, that feels bad because this game's not really a puzzle game. Like that's not what the team is doing.
Yeah, it felt like busy work.
Yeah, it's like, okay, but why though? Like this isn't the point of the game, is to do these physics puzzles. And they're not like, it would be one thing if they were crazy complex, like really interesting physics puzzles, but they're not, which makes me feel like it just was something they did to make use of tech that they had rather than the other way around.
Yeah, it's almost like a tech demo.
Yeah,
it is.
And not a very good one.
Not a very good one. Regarding the guns, I liked the shotgun. I thought it felt good.
Yeah, shotgun feels good.
The pistol felt so weak. Like in my mind, a pistol is like, okay, it's single shot, but it's accurate, right? And it didn't feel accurate when you shot it. The railgun was cool. The RPG was cool. The alien guns were cool, but also felt really underpowered and weak, and to the point where you never wanted to use them. The enemies were neat. I liked the jetpack guys that teleport. That was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But then they felt like they teleported so much that it got annoying after a while. Like right before you're about to kill them, they teleport, and then you got to find them again. I do like the mechanics of the beer and the steroids. Of like, oh, I'm going to die. I need to drink this beer so I don't die at this moment. Because that did save me a couple times where I drank a beer and I didn't die. But then the steroids thing was cool, but I thought it should be more... It doesn't feel special because you can always carry them with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's more like a get out of jail free card. Whereas I feel like when you get that rage power up in Doom, which I'm going to be comparing this to the Doom 2016 remake a lot, it's intentional and it's in this moment because the developers wanted you to have this time where you could feel like a hero or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Did you like the boss battles? How did you feel about the boss battles that we played?
I don't know. They feel like you're just sort of planted in a very small area, and then it's like do the thing to make the boss vulnerable and then fire at it. It felt hollow, I guess. I don't know. It didn't feel particularly engaging, although it was more fun than some of the other parts, I guess. Yeah,
the queen is the one I have in mind the most because the mechanic is you bounce a grenade off of a like lily pad trampoline thing, get the grenade to hit behind her, and then she's stunned, and then you shoot her with rockets.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing is they even say in the first boss fight, only explosives deal damage to bosses. So then if you ran out of explosives, which they would have explosives hidden somewhere around, it would be like a mad dash to this ammo refiller, and then you'd be back in the fight. It just kind of broke the fight up in a weird way.
I agree with that.
It felt like I was always running back to get more ammo. Maybe that's because I'm bad and I'm missing. I don't know. But either way, it just kind of broke things up. I think what happened in our experience is we thought the game was fun because it does open like very Duke Nukem-y in the locker room. And then you can get the ridiculous achievement for pulling something out of the toilet, which I thought was really funny. But then it just kind of falls off as you play and longer. And from what I understand, in the later times of the game, the parts that we missed, it does kind of just feel a little bit more repetitive and hollow as it goes along. But unfortunately, we just ran out of time and we didn't get to beat it. If you did beat Duke Nukem Forever and you disagree with us, send us an email, codeXhistorypodcast@gmail.com. But let's talk about the story before we wrap up here. How does that sound?
Sure.
Duke Nukem 3D ends with Duke saving the Earth from an alien invasion 12 years ago, and Duke Nukem Forever is 12 years later, and that's where we kind of leave off. He's a celebrity. He's a rich person. He's like got Duke branded everything. Honestly, if this game was made today, I would think it was a parody of Donald Trump. That's what I would think, based on everything being branded Duke and all the gold in the casino and everything. It felt very Trumpy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Aliens appear, and then the president tells Duke, don't fight, because he's trying to make peace with the aliens. And then as you leave the Duke cave, which is your bat cave, you get attacked by aliens, so you have to fight them. And then you escape the tower. You got to like escape the casino. And what ends up happening is this is where you get shrunk down for like a really random reason. You just get shrunk. You just drive around in a remote control car. They resize you. You kill a boss in the lobby. You leave. And then you hear from an NPC that apparently is from the first game that, hey, the aliens are going to destroy Las Vegas. They're taking all the women to the Duke Dome. They're like kidnapping women. And then also they have a wormhole at the Hoover Dam. And that's how they're invading Las Vegas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you go to the Duke Dome first. You find out that the aliens are stealing women, impregnating them with like off-brand chest burster aliens from the movie Alien. It's just Alien, essentially, but way overtly sexual and weird. And then Duke's two girlfriends that you meet at the beginning die at this point. Spoilers to a 12-year-old game. And I felt nothing. I don't know about you, but you just don't care about the other characters around you.
No, not at all. I don't know if you're supposed to.
Yeah, it's Duke Nukem. I guess that's like kind of where you're at. You're Duke Nukem. Maybe you don't care. Maybe it's like saying, oh, this is Duke. He doesn't care. So you defeat the queen in the dome, and then you're on your way to the Hoover Dam, and you're in a helicopter. And of course, it crashes because you're riding in a helicopter in a video game. And then you got to climb to the top of the stratosphere to go stop them. And that's kind of where we ended. That's where Tyler and I stopped playing. And then the rest of the story, including the end, is full of some pretty clear twists and turns. Like, I had a funny feeling the president at the beginning of the game telling us not to fight the aliens was suspicious. I don't know about you, Tyler. Turns out the president's evil, and he's wanting to try to ally with the Cycloid Emperor and kill Duke so they could both control the Earth. That's where we're at. Duke thwarts these plans by destroying the Hoover Dam with explosives he gets from another character, Dylan, who's from a previous Duke Nukem games. And then the president is killed at the Hoover Dam by the Cycloid Emperor, but Duke defeats the Cycloid Emperor and then barely escapes because before the president died, he called in a nuclear strike to like kill everybody. And that's like where the game proper ends. What's more intriguing to me than the main story actually is this DLC called The Doctor Who Cloned Me, because they bring back the enemy from the original Duke Nukem platforming games, Dr. Proton.
Oh.
And he's trying to clone Duke, make an army of Dukes to kill the aliens, and then he can take over when the aliens are gone. So it's like a weird power struggle kind of thing. Now, is this story good? I'm not entirely sure. I can't say I did because I didn't watch the end of it. But for me, it seems very obvious and not the kind of story you'd want to wait on for 14 and a half years. I don't know about you, Tyler. How do you feel about
I mean, it's all just a vehicle to like try to show off how cool Duke is. But it never, like, Duke never goes far enough into like the parody territory for you to sort of take it as a joke, I guess. But then it's like also feels too ridiculous to actually be serious that he's actually this awesome. And so it just falls in this like weird like middle ground of like, I'm not sure if you actually want me to think Duke is awesome or if this is all a joke and we're just like all laughing at Duke. And it just sort of falls flat because they don't really pick a side in all of that.
Yeah, it's like, it's, you know what, it kind of is compared to like watching a movie that's like Scary Movie, you know, like a parody movie. But it doesn't hit. That's how it feels.
That's exactly what it is. It's Scary Movie 3.
Scary Movie 3, and it's trying to parody action movies.
Yeah, it just doesn't hit. And like the game is also very reliant on shock value. of there's a lot of nudity, there's a lot of like cursing, there's a lot of
gore, people explode, you
people
dismember aliens, like it's all a thing.
It's all stuff that would have hit better 10 years earlier, probably, because it's kind of an edgy sort of humor that would have just gone over better about a decade earlier. So it definitely feels out of place for that reason. Because like by 2011, we were kind of, I think as a society, we were kind of over that kind of humor, especially that kind of humor done poorly, which is what Duke Nukem Forever is.
Agreed. I think that's a good way to put it. Compare it to a movie like the parody movies that just don't work.
Yep.
So let's talk about the legacy before we wrap this up here. All right. So do we call Duke Nukem a forgotten game or an abandoned game? And if so, is it for a good reason? I think it's abandoned for a good reason.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on what we mean by abandoned. Like, do I think they will eventually make another Duke Nukem game? I do think they will eventually make another Duke Nukem game. We're probably about due for like a Duke Nukem reboot, like the Doom games probably.
Here comes a little bit of foreshadowing from Tyler. Good job, Tyler. You ready?
That's what I think. I didn't even read ahead in our notes here, so I don't know what's coming, but it's definitely not forgotten. We always talk about, like, Duke Nukem's biggest thing here is, I think, as a cautionary tale for the industry, like, this is what happens when a game takes 15 years to make. I don't know if there are any examples of games that took that long to make that ended up being good. I think there are only examples where it turned out poorly.
We were playing the game, and you said, like, every couple of years on Reddit, someone will post their receipt of buying Duke Nukem Forever and pre-ordering it in, like, 1997.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's so funny that this is, like, the internet meme is this game. But going back to a new game, Scott Miller of Apogee, in that same blog post, mentions Gearbox still has the license for Duke.
Okay.
Quote, "It seems like the obvious move would be for Gearbox Software to recreate Duke Nukem 3D using Unreal 5, he said, and it does well. Then start making more Duke adventures while also expanding the universe with new characters." End quote. Not a bad idea. And honestly, we're kind of in the age of remakes, right? Dead Space remake just came out. It's doing pretty well. Witcher 3 got its HD re-release. Might be a thing. Might be a time. I'm not sure. I'm skeptical still because we talk a lot about nostalgia on the podcast, right? That's kind of what drives us, I would argue, right? Like you talk about Metal Gear Solid or Final Fantasy, and I'm all like snowboard kids, like that kind of thing, and weird games from our childhood we remember. But I don't even know if Duke Nukem 3D would connect with a younger audience. It would only be for people that played that game in 1996.
Yeah, so if you're going for just like a straight like remake of that game, then yeah, you're sort of appealing to the people who loved it in 1996, and I don't think that is the way to go. If you're gonna do Duke Nukem, you reboot the whole thing. This is my opinion. I think you have to reboot the whole thing. You have to take a look at Duke Nukem as a character, what makes him compelling, what makes him fun, and I think you got to lean really heavy into the action hero parody stuff which I don't think Duke Nukem Forever like went full on. I think they kind of only half measured the parody stuff. So I think you have to just do that part better, and then you make a whole new game starting over from scratch, and you basically do like kind of the Doom 2016 treatment, where you like Doom 2016 is not that similar to the original Doom. The way it is similar to the original Doom is that feeling that people got in 1993 when they played the original Doom. That is the feeling that Doom 2016 gives anybody now. Like, you don't have to have nostalgia for Doom to love Doom 2016, because it gives you that same feeling that Doom did in 1993. And I think you need to do the same thing with Duke Nukem. You need to take a look at Duke Nukem 3D and say, okay, what about this was so great? And then how do we recreate that in a modern setting? And it's going to be hard because a lot of what people loved about Duke Nukem in 1996 was the edginess of stuff that doesn't really fly as well today. Like a lot of that hyper masculine stuff just doesn't hit anymore. So it would be difficult, but I think you could do it if you leaned heavily into the parody aspect. That's my opinion.
So there's a couple things that you made me realize that we forgot to talk about. Well, one thing we forgot to talk about in particular with gameplay, I love the ego meter.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
it's not health, it's ego.
It's ego. It's Duke Nukem lives on his ego, and that pushes him forward. So when you do these little activities like play pinball and do well, or work out or bench press a bunch of stuff while you're in the game, your ego goes up. That's probably my favorite thing from Duke Nukem Forever, I think.
That's pretty funny, yeah.
But the other side of the spectrum for me, if they didn't go full camp, is what if we saw a Duke Nukem redemption story? Like, this is after all this stuff, and it's all failed. And it's like Old Man Logan, but with Duke Nukem trying to like be a person in today's modern age. That would be funny to me.
Yeah, or a post-apocalyptic Duke Nukem where he basically like I guess I assume at the end of Duke Nukem Forever he like saves everybody, but maybe there's something about that didn't go well. And it's sort of a meta commentary on like how he tried to save everybody and was unsuccessful in Duke Nukem Forever. And so this new game is like him wandering the post-apocalyptic wasteland, like trying to get back what he had and save the world. That could be kind of funny, I think, in a world where he's like, yeah, I'm so awesome. And like everybody else is like, no, you're not. This whole thing happened because of you. You're not awesome anymore. And him like redeeming himself. That could be a way to continue the same story, I guess.
Yeah, that would be true. I don't know if they'd want to scrap it all together or remake it, but I think it deserves something. Something should come of it.
I think the franchise has enough mind share. Like everybody knows Duke Nukem, like it'll sell based on name alone, at least for one more entry. So I think I would be surprised if we never saw Duke Nukem again. Because Duke Nukem, like you said, Duke Nukem Forever turned a profit, even though it wasn't a great game. I think there's a lot of people out there who would still love to see a good Duke Nukem game.
Also, Gearbox, Borderlands humor. They can do humor. They could make something work. Like regardless of like what you think of their newer games, I feel like Borderlands 1 and 2 had funny moments in it, and they could like find that in Duke Nukem and make that happen. So I still haven't played Tiny Tina's Wonderland. Now that I realized it,
Me neither.
We should try that sometime. Anyway, that's Duke Nukem. We wanted to talk about this. We just spent the whole time talking about Duke Nukem. I kind of love that. We're not going to do any emails today, but Tyler, what you been playing this week?
Other than Duke Nukem. Duke Nukem. I've been playing more Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories on Game Boy Advance. And I bought World of Warcraft, so I'm back on the World of Warcraft train.
Baby.
I'm back in. I played a little bit more Crisis Core. I think that's going to get set to the side a little bit as I delve into more Destiny and World of Warcraft, because we played some Destiny. Also, we finished the new dungeon, Spire of the Watchers. That was pretty fun.
That was cool. I liked that.
Me too.
I love electricity mechanic. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, Destiny dungeons are great. So, I think I'm going to put Crisis Core to the side a little bit. Game's already 15 years old. It can wait. I've beaten it already in my life. Like, it's okay for me to come back to that one later. So, going to play some World of Warcraft and Destiny for a little while now. What have you been playing?
Ooh, well, this has been a good week for me because we did the Destiny dungeon, but also I have played a lot of Witcher 3 this week. I'm actually in the third act, like getting close to the end here. I have to go to Skellige and like gather people, and that's what I'm doing right now to like help me in the final confrontation. Spoilers to the game, but I'm gonna miss it. I don't know if Mike in Philly still listens to the podcast. If you do, Mike, you're right. It's a good game. I'm really into it, and I actually now want to play the old games and talk about it on the podcast. It's kind of where I'm at.
Ooh, I'm in.
We might do that down the road, but The Witcher 3 is really growing on me. I messed up earlier this week, and I almost missed the chance to romance any of the characters, and I was able to save it, which is good without having to like reload a save or anything like that. I found it. But because I feel like if you play those games and you don't romance a character, you're like not playing the game. You're missing a crucial aspect of it.
You goofed.
I did. So got that figured out. I got some of the new, like the armor sets, like the Witcher Master Gear armor, the wolf set, because I heard that was the best for DPS, and I love me some DPS. And it's been super fun, just solving mysteries, fighting ancient wood gods in Skellige. That's what the last big monster I killed. It was really cool. But yeah, I am enjoying Witcher 3. I kind of fell off Pokemon a little bit. I only have like 3 or 4 more activities to do before I go to the Elite Four in that game, so I should just do those. But I've been all about The Witcher 3. I've been really enjoying it. And the HD remake is beautiful. Kaer Morhen, the like area where the Witchers are, their castle, the skybox just looks really cool. It looks beautiful with the mountains and everything and the lighting. I'm really enjoying it. So
nice. That was a free update to PC? That's incredible.
Yeah, just came with the game. And my saves transferred over too. That's kind of what stopped me from playing it. Is I was like, are my saves not going to transfer? They totally did. It was awesome. I couldn't go back with my old saves, but my new saves will like work fine. So that's cool.
Cool.
But that's all I've been playing. If you want to send us an email, you can do that at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. If you want to join our Discord or also send us an email, you can do that through codexpodcast.net now. That website's working like a charm. Tyler's on Twitter at SneakerElf, ELPH. I'm on Twitter at Mecoletta, MECOLETTA. That's it. Do you want to say bye to everybody, Tyler?
Goodbye, everybody.